Okay, throughout Diablo's history, there have been times where certain builds have been much stronger than others, and today, we're going to be sharing with you the strongest class builds in Diablo with the latest patch 1.0.3. These builds are going to be rated based off the level 50 through 100 experience, as well as the maximum potential for pushing nightmare dungeons as high as you can. Okay, now before we get deeper into the video, it's very important to know that on this channel, we're very selective with the products or partnerships that we team up with, because we want to help you as the viewer as much as we can while also keeping the channel progressing. That's why we want to share with you the greatest community to acquire gaming gear, whether it be through buying or selling, with Jawa. I gotta tell you, the second I heard about Jawa, I was hooked. I just recently bought practically a damn near supercomputer, but I knew there were going to be extra parts that I needed, like a couple of new solid state drives and a brand new monitor. Jawa made it incredibly straightforward by listing all of their sellers that I can directly purchase all of these products from. And if you're looking for something bigger, you could even go through their commission builds program where you could fill out a short quiz with the type of PC you may need and what games you play, and the system will automatically pair you up with a verified seller to create a custom just for you. And the best thing about it is that there's actually a fully fledged community Discord with over 8,000 active members to answer all of the crazy questions I have whenever I need. So if you want to get started, click on the link in the description below to head to Jawa's website and start souping up your PC setup to have the most fun you possibly can while gaming. Once again, I want to give a shout out to Jawa for sponsoring today's video. I want to thank you as the viewers for supporting us. Now, let's get back to the content. Now, kicking things off with hands down the best build for Sorcerer right now, and it's going to be your Ice Shards Sorcerer. This build has an answer to absolutely every problem out there, whether it be AoE damage, farming, super high crowd control with solid defensives, and the capability to push nightmare dungeons to their absolute limit. By combining Frost Nova and their unique chest piece that pulls enemies in after teleporting, the Raiment of the Infinite, you have a fantastic way of grouping up enemies and freezing them for your Ice Shards to just completely annihilate them with nothing but a few casts of the spell. And with bringing you enough mana regeneration, you actually have no need for a core skill, which gives you access to another defensive or ultimate ability to really refine the class and bring you a severe advantage over your peers. The best part about this build is that it's incredibly straightforward and user-friendly. By using Ice Shards as your only source of actual damage, and your 1-2 punch combo of freezing enemies with Frost Nova to annihilate them in groups is incredibly easy. This build is phenomenal for anyone looking to push nightmare dungeons as high as you can on Sorcerer, with a build that requires minimal legendaries to actually come online and get going. The Ice Shards build is at the top of the list when it comes to Sorcerer, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. The explosive Shadowmist build for Necromancer has completely taken over this class's community the past couple of weeks. This was the first Necromancer build that completed a Nightmare Tier 100, and it's all for a really good reason. The crazy thing about this build is that it is not a bone build, and it's a shadow damage based build. By using the key passive Shadow Blight and turning all of your attacks into shadow damage, you're dealing a ton of damage over time to enemies combined with your shadow pools of Corpse Explosion. And by using Decrypify with the cooldown reduction setup, you can massively reduce your cooldowns to pretty much spam all of your abilities to maintain your uptime on Bone Storm as well as Blood Mist to maximize your damage output and to pretty much make you near invulnerable. So it is definitely one of the greater Necromancer builds in terms of general mob clearing, and is probably the best Necromancer build in terms of survivability and pushing nightmare dungeons to their limit. So while you're sitting in that juicy Blood Mist and vulnerability, all your enemies will be rotting away from your Corpse Explosion, Bone Storm, and Blight Shadow damage combo, making this great for anyone to pick up and try. So it seems that Werewolf Tornado Druid came out of absolutely nowhere the last couple weeks, and it's going to stay on top in terms of the Druid meta. Now, to be clear, the build does require a unique and very specific legendary to even be used, but the gameplay is incredibly user-friendly and very rewarding if you're able to do so. The idea is that you take Grizzly Rage, which normally turns into a Werebear, and acquire the legendary aspect to have you turn into a Werewolf instead. The big kicker is that with enough cooldown reduction and Calm Before the Storm procs, you can make the Dire Werewolf form permanent, and if you're in Werewolf form, your Storm skill costs are reduced by up to 50%, giving you the ability to spam your tornadoes as much as you want. This build is fantastic for endgame because it brings limitless AoE damage with tornadoes, and a ton of self-healing when you kill targets. Pairing this with the Temerity Pants, it is a match made in heaven for doing just about anything in Diablo 4 endgame for the Werewolf Tornado Druid. Next up, you have the Trapper Rogue, and it's definitely one of the best rogue builds out there, no doubt. Combining Poison Trap and Death Trap to constantly crowd control and knock down enemies is one of those 1-2 punch combos that is really build defining in Diablo 4. With their Exposure Capstone talent that has the chance to reduce the cooldown of your trap skills by 20% whenever you deal direct damage to enemies affected by trap skills, you can pretty much have no cooldowns on your heavy hitters, which is going to be your trap skills, and they can also bring you an incredible amount of crowd control to group up enemies for you to be able to deal extra damage to them when they are clumped together with either Shadow Imbuement or Twisting Blade's Blade Dancer's legendary aspect. What makes this build so fun to use is that it's incredibly effective, you're spamming your cooldowns non-stop, and it's very straightforward to play. Trapper Rogue is fantastic for group play in particular because with your Death Trap ability, you suck all the enemies into the center and cause you or your teammates to deal massive area of effect damage to all of them at once, pretty much like shooting fish in a barrel. Okay, now we all knew this one was coming because the Whirlwind Barbarian is back on the list. I'd say the strongest thing about this build is that the gameplay is very straightforward and new player friendly, and still the Barbarian shout abilities, even after all the tunings the last couple of patches, are incredibly strong and effective for almost every Barbarian build out there. You would go in there and supercharge yourself with Rally, Warcry, and Challenging Shout, and buff yourself additionally with Berserker Rage and go on your way of Whirlwinding for as long as you possibly can. This brings you a melee bruiser build that is very fluid and mobile by whirlwinding through enemies, and it's very durable with their constant health regeneration and fortify as well. You even have some utility for groups if you use the Grasping Whirlwind legendary aspect to pull enemies in to do some really nice setup combos for your team also. Overall, the Whirlwind Barbarian is in an excellent spot right now, and definitely one of the best builds in the game as of lately. Moving on now to a brand new build making the list, it is the Blizzard Sorcerer build. Now, the Blizzard ability on its own is quite unimpressive, of course, but pairing it with the legendary aspect that summons ice spikes inside of your blizzards, which can stack an infinite number of times, by the way, turns this ability into an absolute wrecking ball. What you're seeing on screen right now is a Blizzard Sorcerer build that is absolutely destroying Uber Lilith in under 2 minutes and really making the devs question what the heck is even going on here. Like usual, with nearly every Sorcerer build out there, you're actually going to grab all 4 of your defensive abilities, which increase your survivability drastically inside of Nightmare Dungeons, as well as farming as quickly as you possibly can. Additionally, you go about your day dealing a ton of extra damage to crowd control or frozen enemies, and just simply spamming Blizzard, covering the whole map with a Frost Storm, destroying everyone while you could be completely on the move during the whole process. This build brings fantastic AoE damage as well as control to everyone caught inside of your blizzards, and is definitely a nice mix-up away from Ice Shards because that's pretty much what everyone's playing right now when it comes to the Sorcerer. The only issue with this build is that the legendary aspect required to make it viable isn't in the Codex of Power, so you're going to have to rely on RNG when it comes to having this build come online and progress your character. All in all though, nothing's cooler than looking like Jaina Proudmoore from World of Warcraft, covering the map in a frozen wake by spamming blizzards on all of your enemies. Another build looking to make its return on this list is the very straightforward Bone Spear Necromancer build, and it's doing some incredible damage right now. Bone skills as a whole for the Necromancer have a very severe advantage of having a lot of great damage multipliers baked into the bone skills entirely. One of its great assets is that it makes all enemies hit by Bone Spear vulnerable, amplifying your damage to anyone hit significantly. And with a couple of resource aspects on your rings to generate essence, you have a build that's able to shoot out endless bone spears, dealing great consistent DPS to all enemies hit, and the ricochets from the bone spears deal an insane amount of damage as well. Now, the Necromancer does lack mobility, of course, but you surely make up for it with some survivability with Blood Mist, and the damage reduction from Bone Storm making you much tankier. On top of it, to kite enemies, you have Bone Prison paired with Corpse Tendrils to keep enemies locked down in an area to toss out Bone Spears infinitely, making it easier to line up your Bone Spear projectile, hitting all of the enemies inside. All in all though, the Bone Spear Necromancer does incredible damage while having a nearly endless essence for a consistent DPS class that's very straightforward and effective. Next up, we have the Machine Gun Rapid Fire Rogue, and it's definitely a brand new kid on the block this time around. This build is incredibly strong and requires only one legendary aspect to really start coming into its own. When you damage a vulnerable enemy with rapid fire, you actually regenerate nearly all the energy you would spend shooting out a rapid fire. So as long as you apply vulnerability, you could shoot out like a machine gun from a sniper's range, dealing incredible damage and taking away all the risk of being hit in melee range. By combining this concept with the exploit glyph that makes enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds when you first encounter them, you nearly have 100% uptime on full energy, allowing you to spam your rapid fire ability and not even need a basic skill, allowing you to pick up another ability depending on what you need most, whether it be damage, utility, or mobility. The strongest thing about this build is that it's super straightforward in the sense that you are literally spamming rapid fire as much as you can click it, as long as you make enemies vulnerable, and you can do this in various ways through either your traps or your explosions from your Shadow Imbuement spell. All in all, the rapid fire ability is a super high DPS build that leaves for great creativity with other abilities in your skill tree, and anyone can pick it up to have a great time with this rogue build. And for our final build of the day, we have the Mighty Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian. Now, it's said that if you're looking to push Nightmare Dungeons as high as you possibly can, Hammer of the Ancients is going to be your way to go. This ability doesn't have a large area of effect, yes, but you can instantly solve that problem with the Ancestral Force aspect that you could find in your Codex of Power. And this ability does tremendous AoE damage for a relatively cheap cost of Fury. The biggest issue for this build is your Fury generation, but once you solve that, this build can clear up just about anything in the game. Like usual for Barbarians, you take Lunging Strike to give you some mobility, load up on all 3 of those shouts to buff yourself as much as you can with great Fury regeneration, movement speed, and damage, and then combine that with Wrath of Berserker to give you a massive Hammer of the Ancients attack that could pretty much wipe your screen clean no matter where your hammer lands. The Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian is a very strong melee build that controls the battlefield and is very user-friendly for beginners, making it a perfect choice if you're a straightforward type of Barbarian player. Now, as you can see in Diablo 4, there are some pretty amazing builds, and with the latest patch, there were some minor buffs across the board, but we just wanted to display to you today the builds that seem to be performing the best in terms of pushing Nightmare Dungeons, as well as general effectiveness in the end game. So the real question is now, what do you think is the best build in Diablo 4 as of right now? Let us know in the comment section below, as we would love to chat with you all on this topic. We also want to take a moment to shout out our channel members over here on YouTube, because you are all the #1 supporters of the Comeback Kids, and we absolutely couldn't keep this channel going without you all. The giveaway for our channel members this month is going to be the brand new Razer Black Widow Pro keyboard, worth over $230. So if you all are interested in earning exclusive rewards for the Comeback Kids, as well as being given the opportunity to giveaways constantly, click that join button below or follow the link in the description to become an official Comeback Kid today. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. It's an absolute pleasure to be making content for you all. Until the very end, my name is Sky from the Comeback Kids. I will see you all in the next one. Peace!